Hello, today is the 12th of August 2023, and today Nouvel is 78 years old. So let's wish him happy birthday and let's begin a journey through some of his works. Nouvel, born the 12th of August 1945, is a French architect. He studied at the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris and was a founding member of Mars 1976 and Syndicat de l'Architecture. He has obtained a number of prestigious distinctions over the course of his career, including the Aga Khan Award for Architecture. Technically, the prize was awarded for the Institut du Monde Arabe, which Nouvel designed in Paris. The Wolf Prize in Arts in 2005. Actually, I don't know where this prize is offered, in what country. Is it Ulf? Is it Wolf? Anyway. And the Pritzker Prize in 2008. A number of museums and architectural centers have presented retrospectives of his work. This is the man. A man with a significant power of persuasion, I would say a master of rhetorics, and I think architects should master theatrical arts in order to convince clients that what they do is good and it's worth investing in. He is very much a Frenchman in all respects. And he, from what I read, he wanted first to become a painter, but he was not accepted in the school for painting. So then he settled for architecture, and he never looked back. He had a great mentor, and he worked for him. That is Claude Parron. And this year it was the centennial Claude Parron in February. An interesting architect who loved the diagonal and the sloping plane and the slanted plane, and something of the spirit of Claude Parron connected with something in the spirit of Nouvel. A seductive Frenchman. And now l'Institut du Monde Arabe, one of his earlier works. It is in Paris, not far away from Notre Dame de Paris, across the Seine. This is was a building that attracted attention to Nouvel. Not the only one, but he was able here to marry technology with some references to Arab culture, and in this sense, he can be called a contextualist. He was never a non-referential architect, and that is to his I almost said to his glory, because I think contextualism can be hated from a certain position, theoretical position in architecture, or you could be a placid contextualist who doesn't invent anything. But this is not the case of Nouvel. Nouvel has subtle clin d'oeils towards what we call the context. I'm sorry, something wrong with my voice. Here is a picture from the inside of l'Institut du Monde Arabe. A lot of metal. The building was expensive because he invented the gadget. In fact, you can see it here from the interior, the back of the facade, which has a reference to the Arab culture, but it's also connected with the sophistications of today's technology. And I'm talking about this. These apertures, they open more or less. I'm sorry again. In connection with how much light you want to have inside the building, and these apertures, they open just like in a camera, and they are manipulated or moved by a sophisticated, probably electronic system, which I understood sometimes doesn't work. So it was an expensive invention. But I like the fact that, despite its high-tech, characteristics, is also discreetly but distinctly connected with aesthetical elements of the Arab culture. And unfortunately, I forgot the name, the particular name for this, motif, ornamental motif. But in his case, it's not just ornamental; it's also functional. So again, the idea was to create a screen, a facade that allows for more or less light through opening more these hexagonal apertures or less. And this is done automatically through a system which, as I said, sometimes doesn't work so well. And I understood the additional investments had to be made in order to, correct this. Here you see the elevation from the inside, the inner side of the elevation, and I think it's an excellent example or proof that it is possible to make a work that is contemporary and at the same time a work which doesn't turn its back on what is called tradition. In this case, the Arab tradition, because it's l'Institut du Monde Arabe, the Institute of the Arab World. I think Jean Nouvel, with this work, demonstrated that it's possible and even desirable to have tradition and innovation, to have continuity and the break, and the break in that continuity. So both. And this is not easy to do, but I think it's one of the challenges of architecture, and maybe not only of architecture. Here it is, just like in a camera. And this system is supposed to work. He's a very minute architect. You wonder if he would not have been an architect, that he would not have been a young man wanting to become a painter. Maybe he could have been an excellent watch repairman. Although, he would not have achieved the fame he achieved as an architect in this way. L'Institut du Monde Arabe, across the Seine from l'Abside de Notre-Dame, to refer to the title of a very nice engraving by Charles Meillon, an engraver from the 19th century. I'm talking about the back, the western facade. Now the eastern facade, sorry, of Notre Dame. A detail of this invention by Jean Nouvel. So here we have again technology, married to ornamentation, and I think this is a challenge that can be very enticing, and I suggest that more is done in this way, where you assume the technology of the present, maybe even anticipating some forms of technology that will come, and also connect with layers of meaning and layers of visuality that belong to previous, times, culturally speaking. It is for this work that he received the Aga Khan Prize. And as I know, as far as I know, the Aga Khan Prize is usually offered to works that, yes, promote Arab values, but not so much in terms of technology. This is more like a technological gadget that Jean Nouvel invented, but because of its explicit connection with the Arab world, he, opened up the interest of the Aga Khan jury. This is a good apartment building, Las Boas, that he proposed. I mean, good in terms of eccentricity, because he shows here his appetite for exoticisms. This is a project that actually was not built, but shows his interest in surrealism and his interest in color. Let's not forget, he wanted to become a painter. And also, there is a mundane side to his work, which made him one of the most successful architects of today, since he has a lot of commissions. And it is this. He is kind of an avant-garde architect, but besides saying épater la bourgeoisie, I think he also serves the bourgeoisie. So there is a space for Jean Nouvel where he operates both as a provocateur and as a server of the interests of those in power, or those with the means to build. Anyway, this was not built. This project was built in Nîmes and is one of his earlier works, and I think he deserves applauses for this work. It's I don't know if I pronounce well, Nouveau apartment building in Nîmes. There are actually two buildings, ship-like, that are parallel, and he employed here constructive elements that can be found, for example, at Home Depot or in Romania at Dedeman. And it shows that with inventiveness, creativity, you can create an interesting architecture that employs, as I said, ready-made constructive entities or materials. If I remember correctly, here he invited some French artists to do some scribbles on the walls of the apartments. And I understood, again, if I remember correctly, and if I don't, I apologize, but I hope I do, that the inhabitants had to sign a contract that they would not change in any way the artworks on the walls, which are kind of scribbles. I found it a little bit amusing because he's an advocate of architecture in plural, and he's an advocate of democracy and fragility. But on the other hand, it seems to be a little bit dictatorial to oblige the inhabitants of this building to live with artworks that might not have satisfy their own aesthetical interests. Anyway, this is the plan of the buildings, and I find them interesting. Again, the sky is the limit when it comes to creativity, even in the field of I don't know if this is social housing, but I don't think it's an expensive housing complex now. And yet, here it is, a skillful architect demonstrating that with inventiveness, you can do a lot. I mean, who would have expected such buildings in, you see the surroundings. And they're not insulting towards the context. It's just that they are different. Nemesis. And here you have, the possibility to meet your neighbors and chat and play chess and sit and create a long line of pots with flowers. Uh, Again, this exterior corridor is very conducive to all kinds of activities which are not planned necessarily by the architect, but I imagine they are very welcome by those living there. A metallic architecture, yes. But Jean Nouvel is a metallic romantic spirit, if I can say so. He loves metal, and even in rusted forms, I imagine he loves rust as well. He does have the soul of an artist, and he's not afraid to use, materials that belong to techne. Now, how many apartment buildings look like this? Not many. And now we see a view of the inside. I hope, yeah, you see here, the scribble. Well, maybe they're not scribbles, but these are, artistic insertions of his friends' artists, or he invited artists to, create moments of artistry, so to speak, on these walls. And I understood that through contract, the inhabitants were not allowed to change them in any way. They were there to remain. Jean Nouvel. Apartments make better places to work than offices. He also said, Jean Nouvel, that ideally we should bring the office into the apartment and the apartment into the office. But the fact that he says that apartments make better places to work in than offices shows me that he appreciates, intimacy, individuality, certain kind of capricious comfort that offices cannot provide. Um, Also shows, I think, his rebellious side, because I don't think he is the typical bureaucratic architect at all. Now, Saint Jean Hotel, here he employed, rust. Is this screen that covers the building, this second facade, this mask, which echoes, the effects of time and water on metal. And I think his artistic sensibility is quite aware of, the passage of time. And in my opinion, this is architecture with a capital A. It's not a big building, but it shows, complexity arrived at with simple means. And is this, this veil, architectural veil, that, in my opinion, adds grace and even mystery to the building. The inside, though, is a different story. So outside is like this. It's a small hotel. Inside, though, it's very clinical. And here I'm tempted to psychoanalyze a little bit Jean Nouvel, but I will abstain because I'm not sure I would say very intelligent things spontaneously at this moment. From what I know, in this hotel, he experienced with, like in this case, you see glass walls that separate the bathroom from the room itself. Not all the rooms are like this, but some rooms do have glass, transparent walls. And he was asked, why did he do this? And he said, well, to promote conversation. But he also said that total transparency is obscene. At another time, he said so. There are, French overtones here in his choice of words and his aesthetical choice in architectural terms. I don't know what to think about this room. It's white, yes. It's clean. I call it clinical. It's almost like a hospital, but it's also. I am now tempted to see some kind of a critical positioning vis-a-vis tourism, because yes, tourism, in my opinion, is, and not only my opinion, is a little bit problematic. And this is a little hotel. It's made for tourists. So imagine two tourists, let's say, using this bed, with that TV in the axis of the bed, and it's something about it which makes me think that Jean Nouvel, despite providing, comfort, he can be also a little bit sarcastic towards lovers of comfort and joie de vivre that tourists are. I mean, look at the pedestal of the platform on which the bed is, the mattress. It's a tall bed, and I mean, look at those two lights, little lights for private use above the pillows. I don't know. It's something about it that invites me to speculate that he can be also subtly sarcastic. And towards the outside, this is the hotel. And his face says it all, This is a very intelligent man who can be, difficult to pin down, because he has a certain smile on his face that you could expect almost anything from him. The Paris Philharmonia, this is a newer work by him, and I was in its proximity, but I was unable to enter it. It's close to Parc de la Villette, and I liked it. I liked it because although it is in metal, a lot of metal, I like the fact that he created this metallic skin that is very ornamental, but also in an abstracted way, but also in a pointillist way. It's like an architectonic Seurat is the fragmentations of the skin, which are ornamental in their nature, create a fuzzy facade, which is, I think, conducive to connect with what music is. It's not easy to do something like this in metal. He had some troubles with this building, I understood. I don't know the judicial details, but there was a conflict between him and the city of Paris, and there were difficult moments for him because of this building. But again and again, a creative architect like Jean Nouvel made news with another building that he built. The interior, yes, it's, almost a typical interior. But the exterior, I find it intriguing. And look at it from this side. Of course, there are interventions of high technology to spread words and messages electronically on the facade, and then you have this skin of some kind of a metallic fish, a giant metallic fish. I think is very interesting, and this is what art is supposed to do, to create novelty and to create parallel discourse and to create provocations. And he is good for this. And that's why he is commissioned. Commissioned and commissioned and commissioned. That's why I keep telling the students, please stop being timid. With timidity, you'll never do anything, really. Just have courage, study, 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 work, work, work. Have courage. An architect like Jean Nouvel shows clearly that it pays to take risks. I mean, even in the context of France. Well, actually, I shouldn't say even in the context of France, because France can be surprisingly quite conformist. They both in terms of architectural education and built architecture. Jean Nouvel is one of the most provocative French architects, and I would say the most accomplished in present times. And he does take risks. And he reinvents himself continuously. He doesn't have a signature way of doing things. I like very much this metallic skin, because he was able to bring sensitivity to the metal. And, look at the fragments. I hope I have another picture. Yes, look, he made these surfaces both on the horizontal planes or the walking slabs and the vertical, well, approximately vertical slanted surfaces of the building. He created this ornamental design, which is original, which maybe has some reference to birds in flight. And when I witness countless students in a school of architecture totally ignoring ornament, I wonder in what time they live, because today ornament is clearly coming back with great force. And here is another example. And we are talking about a very accomplished modern architect. Of course, he worked with high technology. But also you see these people mounting these panels, in this where aleatory manipulations of these plates also is part of the work. I think it's a beautiful attempt to bring something to architecture that orthodox modern architecture ignored for too long. Here he is explaining his project. I am sure he's an excellent lawyer. And he looks convincing, even if you don't hear him talk. And even if you don't understand what he says, it's enough to look at him to be persuaded. Here he is with Zaha Hadid, probably friends. Why is it that architects, at least in some countries, and I'm talking about my country, ignore moments of inspiration like this picture shows? Because I think it is moving to see two important architects, with an obvious sympathy towards each other, people who move architecture, who moved architecture and continue to move it. And such examples inspire students. And unfortunately, the schools of architecture do not want them to be inspired. Some schools of architecture, and it's very sad, very, very sad. Look at this fragment of the building, the Philharmonia of Paris, you know. So those who say that the ornament is Spanish forever from architecture are totally wrong. The birds, the birds. Anyway, I like this skin of this building very much. You can tell it is an adventure. You can tell it is an event. You can tell that here was some you know, there is a level of creation that you know, is challenging. And yeah, he had troubles with the city of Paris, and the city of Paris had troubles with him, but an interesting work came into being: the interior during construction. Expect the unexpected from Jean Nouvel. Now, you know, it's very possible that this lover of expensive hats had and has, you know, an admiration for the quintessential Frenchman, that is Napoleon Bonaparte. Louvre, Abu Dhabi, another, you know, provocative work from this man. And again, we see the ornament insinuating itself in almost unbearable complexities, because you can understand the level of difficulties that the builders had to go through in order to build this. I am not convinced about this totalitarian cupola, you know, perfectly round, a perfect circle, this giant dome. I like very much the impressionism of these openings through which light is filtered poetical, yes, but this, you know, centralized geometrical figure, perfect as it is, in my opinion, is authoritarian, and it sits artificially on what is underneath. Underneath might be some kind of a bazaar, but above is Osman, above is Napoleon. Not in terms of light, because if you look at it through here without realizing the centrality of the geometrical cupola of the dome, this is beautiful, because it is like a curtain. It's embroidered architecture, and it is mysterious, and it allows for you know, asymmetries. It's beautifully woven. Indeed, it is an embroidered architecture, but it's too bad that you know, it's so contained within the you know, it's in my opinion is it should have been more in the spirit of what is underneath here. But this is my opinion. Maybe other people would have a different opinion, but I cannot say anything against what I look at here. You know, is this dematerialization of the cupola, and light enters mysteriously and in varied ways inside the building. Does this man welcome disorder? Yes. Does this man welcome order? Yes. He welcomes both. Now we see echoes from l'Institut du Monde Arabe, but in this case, not in the vertical facade, but in the facade towards the sky, towards the gods. That is the roofing. And they labored incredibly in order to build this. And look at this, you know, again, it's embroidery within the, my mother used to make such things, you know, well, small, of course, and not buildings, you know, to place a cup or a glass on, you know, at occasions, if not always. This shows sensitivity, the fact that this man is quite capable of handling structure, and at the same time, he's desiring of an exquisite ornament, shows to me that he is a complex architect who understands that structure and ornament should come together. And they do in some of his works. Abu Dhabi. And he makes the, you know, I don't know. I so regret that here there are no, you know, there are, you know, just 4 people besides me and not 500 students or 1,000 students to look at this architect and to look at his client and to look at both of them enjoying the adventure called architecture. Okay, there are excesses. Okay, there is plenty of money, right? Because there is petroleum, there is oil. But it is oil which, you know, becomes culture, and becomes culture exactly because of the work of a creative architect. And the clients enjoy it. So, you know, the client is not just that monster that is only made to, you know, sabotage the architect. No, it's not so. You can look at these two faces and you realize that both the architect and the client are happy and look in astonishment at the achievement of an architecture which is creative, and it has to be creative in order to be called architecture. And if it is not creative, it is not architecture. Yes, people labored, but people had jobs, right? To create this labyrinthical embroidery of infinite complexity, you know, they struggled, but maybe even themselves had some kind of a joy that they were able to put together this complex, large-scale work. You could say it's madness. Maybe it is, but it's a beautiful madness. It's preferable to, you know, so-called sanity, which is banal, which is mediocre. Look at this. Embroidery arriving into the field of architecture. And this is just one piece in this giant puzzle of the roofing of the Abu Dhabi Louvre. Everybody deserves applauses because it was a collective adventure. Now, this work doesn't entice me and excites me. It's too, and he has this problem, in my opinion, and I wish he was here, and I would have been happy to wish him happy birthday, but also I would have told him that just as the roofing of the Abu Dhabi Louvre is a little bit too defined and too self-contained, I'm talking about that round, you know, roofing. Here, this tower, which is for a, you know, it's phallic and it's domineering, and in my opinion, his appetite for embroideries at the level of the skin of the building do not manage to balance sufficiently this very assertive geometry. So I'm afraid that between the masculine principle and the feminine principle, he doesn't always create a perfect balance. Or between l'esprit de géométrie and l'esprit de finesse. There seems to be a concern for l'esprit de finesse, but somehow l'esprit de géométrie dominates l'esprit de finesse, at least a little bit. And that's a deficiency, in my opinion. Tour Icon in Lyon. This is a work, it was built, but when I made this presentation, it wasn't yet built. Lyon invested heavily on, signature architecture, and of course, Jean Nouvel had to be present. In fact, he was from a good number of years, because he is not just this tower that he built in Lyon. But here we see again the fact that Jean Nouvel, on one hand, employs assertive structures, and on the other hand, you see he problematizes the look of the building by various means, pictorial in this case, by those delicate colors that create ambiguity on the facade. La Confluence, in that area of Lyon called La Confluence, where, also Wolf Prix built Le Musée des Confluences, and there are other interesting buildings in that area by Massimiliano Fuchsach or Jacob and McFarlane. Anyway, this was a real estate enterprise of some ambitions. I hope I have here. Voici la future toute la confiance. Of course, it's the capitalistic mechanism which tries to sell, with adequate, amounts of money, whatever famous architects build. You see, vente d'exception, exceptional selling. It's money. It's money that the money created the building, and the money had to be doubled or tripled and so on for the glory of the real estate speculators. But we see here, and I hope I have in this presentation also a building he built in New York, where, yes, he has an interest in the monolithical structure, but also in the deterioration of that monolith in the name of a fragmentation, which can be perceived here quite well. So, he creates a building which is not brutally separated from the outside, but through a series of screens and approximations that dilute or diffuse the transition between what we call the outside and what we call the inside. This aspect of Jean Nouvel, which can be connected with his professed liking of architecture plurielle, the plural of architecture, not one architecture, but architectures. This interest in multiplicity, I think, is a quality that he has. He's not a deconstructivist, but in this fragmentation that sometimes he is able to achieve, he problematizes authority, problematizes that very spirit of geometry, which was illustrated so eloquently, too eloquently, in that tower that I showed, and even in that dome of the Louvre Museum in Abu Dhabi. This is in Lyon. And here on the right, we see a remarkable building by Jacob and McFarlane. They built two, actually, the orange one and the green one. And I like this building very much. The one on the right, which also uses embroidery on the facade. So the building on the right is by Jacob and McFarlane. A couple, she's French, he's from New Zealand, I think, and they met as students at SCI-Arc in Los Angeles. They returned to France, and now they have an architecture office that which in 1 year was considered the best architecture office in France. This building in Lyon is one of their best. And very close to it, as you can see, another Parisian, Nouvel, with his building. One Central Park, Sydney. Now, this is a building which I don't admire a lot, and I can explain why. Because I think it's too flamboyant in its rhetorics to so-called honor light, to bring light to the poor plants which are at the bottom. You do not see that bottom here. You see insertions of vertical gardens on the facades of the building. This is a fashion today, and he employed the services of an artist or a landscape architect who does this. But these giant slabs that he hangs at the top of the building, they are meant to direct or redirect light at the bottom between these two buildings in order to make plants capable of living. I hope I have a section or a diagram which shows why he built those extravagant slabs at the top of the building, which in my opinion, I mean, he could have. This is, in my opinion, a false problem or a false modesty, because if you truly care about the plants, you don't have to go, in my opinion, through such extravagant constructions, which are even threatening, I would say, aesthetically. You know, they are threatening. So is this an homage to plants? Is this truly modern, model assertion of a more modest anthropos? I doubt it. Patrick Blanc creates world's tallest vertical garden for Jean Nouvel's Sydney Tower. So he was the one who hanged this, the vertical gardens. This is also, in my opinion, maybe I'm a moralist, but I don't think this is truly the way to so-called pay homage to nature. You know, to hang plants vertically on our towers. You know, it's still a gesture of controlling nature, and in my opinion, we have to be a little bit more modest. Maybe such things look spectacular, but I think we abuse nature for too long. We cannot continue to do this. Yeah, I mean, there are other people who do this sort of thing these days. Hanging gardens at the various heights on our towers, instead of renouncing building such towers when it's not absolutely necessary. I'm going a little bit quicker because I want to see. I hope I have. Yeah, no. You see here in the section on the left, the tortuous process of bringing sunlight in the courtyard. Here we have through reflections to bring sunlight here. I think if you truly cared about the plants here or human beings here, you could have conceived architecture differently. This is a form of architectonic acrobacy or acrobatics that, in my opinion, show a high level of artificiality, and I personally am not very convinced about this. But when you look at the drawings of the project, you see Jean Nouvel, you see the former young man who wanted to become a painter. You know, he's an architect and a skillful architect, but he's also very tempted to problematize architecture in favor of pictorial seductions. And the renderings show this even more than the built work. There are interesting things. They are spectacular, they are theatrical, they are seductive, but I question the depth. You know, they're spectacles, and we abused enough the earth and nature to continue to create such expensive and potentially detrimental spectacles. I think he can do better. The Serpentine Pavilion in London, I like it because it is red, and red is in opposition to green, and this pavilion finds itself inside a garden, inside a park. So you have the redness of the building by Jean Nouvel and the green of the nature around. He's honest in the sense that a building in its essence is not green. Even if we paint it in green, in its essence is still red, because it's made with human materials, you know, with the very idea to build a building is red, conceptually speaking. It's not green. If you decide not to build, then yes, it's a green decision. But if you decide to build, you cannot truly build in a green way. We can mimic being, you know, green, but since we do not build in bamboos or with, you know, found natural materials on a certain site, this is honestly showing the redness, the intrinsic redness of the built work, of the building. And I like the dialectics because it shows the conflict between man and nature, nature and man. Man is red, nature is green, and he is not cultivating or proposing in this work delusions. That he likes conflict, I would say that is easily noticeable. Maybe in more subtle ways than some other architects, but he's aware of the dialectics present in life and in art alike. Serpentine Pavilion, London, Jean Nouvel, red, red, and red again, the red of passion, the red of revolution, the red of blood. Jean Nouvel's Cyprus Tower has plants bursting through its walls. I just mentioned the conflict. Well, here we have the conflict between, again, the conflict between nature and man, or nature and architecture. And yes, just as in some other previous examples where the spirit of geometry had the upper hand a little bit, here too. And nature is just you know, tolerated to burst a little bit through those little squares. You know, it's a concession to nature, which in my opinion could have been more generous. Well, in this picture, yes, there are plenty of plants, but here you can see that nature is still contrived, is still you know, made a prisoner of the you know, Apollonian Cartesianism. Well, partial Apollonian, because also there is some aleatory movement of these little squares, but they are squares. So, and then, of course, this mundane, you know, lux calme volupté for the rich, which sickens me, you know, this splendor in water on the roof of the tower after after we control nature and we only give a little bit of freedom, but it's not really freedom because nature is still incarcerated. It is incarcerated, but it's allowed to, you know, get out a little bit of the cell through the square opening in the facade. I think he could have done better. And there is another work, another hotel, which we are going to see a little bit later, where he went a little bit further in the positive sense, but still with a certain level of artificiality. Yes, in this picture, nature is almost triumphantly escaping the cell, the incarceration. But in reality, we see that the work of man is still dominating. But there is even here an attempt towards embroidery. Unfortunately, he uses a lot of little squares. There is, let us not forget, he's French, the country of Descartes. I think, therefore I am. There is something of that in him, and you know, that's a datum. But I think he can do a little bit better. Like in the MoMA Tower, which is finalized now, and unfortunately, I don't think I have the latest images of this impressive modern Gothic tower in Manhattan, just near, well, it's part of the Museum of Modern Art in New York. And look at it. You know, it's here the structure is alarmingly not following the Cartesian path, and the silhouette of the building is paying homage to the Gothic spirit of Manhattan, of New York City. These are the structures, you know, of the exoskeleton of this tower that waited for many years to obtain all the approvals from the authorities, but it was finally built. Well, this is something I did in Archicad, and I felt tempted to show something which I did it at the time when the work by Jean Nouvel was not yet done. So it's just a coincidence that you look at the tower that he built, and this is a tower I imagined working in Archicad and ArchiCAD. And I just want to tell you that these black lines here, they are not decorations, they are cuts, they are sections through roof planes or the facade planes of the tower. And this is how the building would look like from the top. Again, this is not what Jean Nouvel did, this is what I did. Sorry for the immodesty of showing, but I thought there was some similarity between what I did here and that tower at the MoMA by Jean Nouvel, although this is just a sketch. Anyway, back to Jean Nouvel and the MoMA Tower, which was built. And look at the structure. Here we have a more abrupt embroidery, a more you know, even neurotical embroidery, if I can call it so. It's a woven. It's the work of a spider. Maybe in these illustrations, digital illustrations, more than in reality. But even in reality, the structure is different from what the tower, for example, this one has, or the buildings in the vicinity. You see on the right, Chrysler building, the silhouette of the Chrysler building, and on the left, his own building. again and again, architecture is an adventure, an architecture which refuses to follow the banal road, and sometimes successfully, sometimes less successfully, opens new vistas, opens new ways of seeing the world, building the world, and living. This is the role of the architect, to invent new worlds in a way. Maybe it's too ambitious, but without such ambitions, what raison d'etre would there be in this world for an architect? Look at the structure. Is the structure rational and Cartesian? No, it's not. As such, it is an adventure. And it proclaims the unknown, and it proclaims the irrational, and it proclaims difference, and it proclaims freedom, and it proclaims even the labyrinth, and it proclaims even a certain level of disorder, but disorder is part of life. I like that quotation from the Romanian theater and film director Liviu Ciulei about the role of art to assume, and poetry as well, to assume the conflicts of the world and express them. And I think architecture has to do this as well. Otherwise, we are lying. If we just build, peaceful structures that mimic that everything is in harmony, we totally turn our backs on Ukraine, and not just Ukraine. There are indeed many conflicts in the world, and these conflicts, in my opinion, should be expressed in architecture as well. Let's not, mimic an harmony and a peace which do not exist. Now you see here that indeed this work was postponed for many years, but finally was built. But this illustration was, done at a time when the future of the tower was not yet decided. Now, an apartment building, the 11th Avenue, 111th Avenue in New York City, I mentioned it earlier, where because of the ability Jean Nouvel has to fragment a monolith and create multiplicity in unity. Across the street is a building by Frank Gehry, but the building by Frank Gehry, in my opinion, is inferior to this building by Jean Nouvel. So here we see some kind of an anti-Descartes architecture. He's an architect coming from France. He's an architect who, could claim some connection with René Descartes, but on the other hand, he turns against Descartes. Or maybe I'm wrong. I'm not an expert in Descartes. Maybe Descartes himself understood the limits of even of thinking. So the capriciousness of l'esprit de finesse should manifest itself and enter into a conflict with the spirit of geometry. So here we have this almost irritating fragmentation to the whole, which creates complexity. And this complexity, I think, it's worth pursuing and expressing. Not everything is clear. Not everything is, above doubt. Not everything is, I mean, he employs, straight lines, but the meaning of the building transcends the rectangular, transcends linearity, I think. And look, is a vortex of elements which create almost how to call it, some kind of an architectural noise. Copenhagen Concert Hall, a different work. I mean, after this, we arrive here, a blue cube. Not bad. This one as well, in a different way. That's why I said he is not a signature architect. We saw the tower in Manhattan, part of the Museum of Modern Art complex. Then we saw the apartment building on 11th Avenue, and now we see the blue cube, a theater in Copenhagen. But even here, he problematizes the skin, the elevations of the building through different means in this case, through electronic manipulations of images that change all the time. Jean Nouvel. Lucerne Culture and Congress Center in Switzerland. I mean, even if I didn't know this was built by Jean Nouvel, I probably would have thought that it was by Jean Nouvel. I don't know why I see in this building. I even see his face somehow, although there is no formal connection between the building and his face at all. But is this roofing, this canopy, this cantilever part, which in my opinion is so much Jean Nouvel. Although other architects employed similar things as well. But somehow in the case of Jean Nouvel is, I look at this picture and I say, this is a building by Jean Nouvel. Although he's not a signature architect, but somehow this building in particular, also the blackness, the resolute horizontal head of the building is Jean Nouvel through and through. I think he can be a very affectionate man, but I also think he can be sometimes a little bit cynical. And maybe Friedrich Nietzsche was right when he thought that a great work is a balanced, is simultaneously innocent and cynical. Maybe if you can bring together innocence and cynicism, then maybe yeah, you could arrive at something which could be approximated with the word great, maybe. Switzerland. But again, that black roofing, horizontal as it is and thin, it makes me non-sentimental. I don't know very well how else to put it. The Dubai Opera, a very interesting work which was not built. I mean, I cannot claim that I understood it. I saw some images of it, but they are dreamlike. This is psychedelic architecture. And look at this. It's, yes, some elements from what we saw earlier can still be perceived. I didn't analyze the building. I didn't comprehend it. But just these images, I think they are otherworldly. This is a psychedelic architecture. And bravo to him that an architect who builds as much as he does is capable of challenging himself to begin with, and then challenging the others by bringing to the attention of the others a dreamlike architectonic presence or absence, or both. Maybe both. The Dubai Opera, but was not built, and it will not be built. Étrange. This we had seen, the Abu Dhabi Louvre. maybe the building would not have been, if built, so spectacular as it was in these these renderings. I don't know. This one we saw from the Louvre. And now this is a picture with a famous architect on the left, Renzo Piano, in my opinion, the worst dressed architect in the world. I am joking a little bit, and I apologize for my joke. But truly, well, the worst painter, the worst dressed painter in the world ever was Pablo Picasso. And also jokingly, I say the worst dressed architect in the world is Renzo Piano. And this is almost hard to believe because Italians in general address very, very well. And I'm sure Renzo Piano is very capable of dressing well. But I mean, look at the color of his sweater. By contrast, Jean Nouvel is a man of sophistication, a Frenchman all dressed in black, and his very young wife on the right can only be smiling, of course. I don't know if the person on the right is the wife of Renzo Piano. She doesn't seem to be, but who knows? Anyway, and here he is again with his young wife. It pays to be a famous architect in various ways. Here they are again. And Jean Nouvel does look good. He's, everything works for him. We can only take our heads off in front of him. Less expensive our heads, of course, than his heads. Sorry, this is a picture of me with a hat, which I found in a thrift shop. But I know that Jean Nouvel sports some very expensive, very fine hats. And here he is with whom? On the right is Richard Meyer, the man who harasses young women in his office. And Jean Nouvel, I think, shows, this, I would say, childlike quality, the way he smiles and his, yeah, I like to imagine he does have a certain level of innocence. And here he is again with the worst dressed architect of all times. And I don't know who the short man in the center is. I think a famous designer, but I don't know his name. And the Frenchman, of course, on the right, Jean Nouvel. I like this picture. Now, clearly, this picture is I mean, it's impossible to not to see a connection between this picture and Bonaparte. But we see the scarf, move perhaps by the wind hilariously on the top of the hat. And nevertheless, it's an impressive picture, I think. And, it is irresistible as a very successful French architect. Now here we go from the hats to the shoes. And I would challenge your imagination to identify the owners of the shoes, starting from the shoes. Then we'll move upwards. I think they're all Pritzker Prize laureates, these people. They all won the Pritzker Prize. Let's see now who wears what shoes. On the left, Christian de Portzamparc, the other Frenchman who won the Pritzker, and let's look at his shoes. Then near him is the anonymous architect from China, the first architect to win a Pritzker. In the center, with a different sweater, but still, in my opinion, with a dubious taste for dressing, Renzo Piano. And then the eternally young, but younger actually anyway, Aravena. And then Jean Nouvel, who doesn't give up his liking for blackness. So On the left, France, then China, then, I don't know, is Renzo Piano still an Italian? Maybe he is. Italy, then Chile, and then France again. France on the left, France on the right. One new change building in London. I like this building. It's a mall. It's a mall. So nothing, intrinsically glorious. But what is glorious is that he made this mall by taking off his hat in front of the St. Paul Cathedral. You see this cut, this rift into the building. This is an homage to St. Paul Cathedral, and I imagine the picture was taken from St. Paul Cathedral by Sir Christopher Wren, a very important building, if not the most important building in London. And we'll see the plan. So a large commercial building, and he did build some commercial buildings, large, Jean Nouvel. But again, it shows that he is capable of an explicit, sometimes subtle, sometimes less subtle, explicit contextualism. Let's see if I have the. Yes, you see here the plan. This is St. Paul Cathedral, and this is the center of his mall. And he created this rift, this cut into the building as a clear indication that he cannot ignore Christopher Wren's building. In fact, when you exit the mall, you are directed towards God, so to speak, towards the dome of the big cathedral. So this does say something about Jean Nouvel, that even when he operates at a very mundane level and builds a very large mall in the center of London, he is aware of certain hierarchies or priorities. I'm not saying that he is a believer necessarily, but in his way, he recognizes values which transcend the mundane and transcend the commercial and transcend, even capitalism. So let's look again at this building in London, a mall. He built another one, Lafayette Galleries in Berlin, and maybe others. This one is in London, and I like what he didn't build, meaning that cut into the building that connects with the cathedral. Sorry, what am I doing here? I'm moving backwards for some reason, sorry. So I think very explicitly, he makes us aware of St. Paul Cathedral. He almost seems to say, okay, you go shopping. I shop, therefore I am. Yet, do not ignore the cathedral. Do not ignore Sir Christopher Wren. You see here in this hand-drawn sketch, I don't know if he did it or somebody else, but again, the connection between St. Paul Cathedral and his building is not to speak about the fact that the openings of the island of shopping, which his mall is in the form of a distorted cross, is it not? It's a cross, distorted. And when you exit, well, when you enter, you are with your back towards the cathedral. But when you exit the mall through here, and I think this is the main exit. I don't know if maybe there are, secondary ones here too. But the main one is here. You face directly, and I hope I have a picture here, the dome of this famous large cathedral in London. Here it is. This is what you see after you happily, spend some money in the mall. You exit and you see God, or the house of God, because this is what the cathedral is supposed to be. This is Jean Nouvel, with his dualities and with his complexities and with his contextualism. And I think we can admire him for this. I mean, we see here clearly, in my opinion, that, he's taking his hat off, his beloved, expensive hat off, in front of the house of God, in front of the cathedral. This is what this rift, this cut means, in my opinion. And I don't know if he did this sketch, but I imagine he did. Well, here we see clearly the dialogue, maybe a little bit anxious, the anxious dialogue between the mall and the Sir Christopher Wren's Cathedral, St. Paul. And here he is again. And the view of the mall from the cathedral. It's almost, maybe I read too simplistically and too naively. It's very possible. But I imagine, exiting the building after happy shopping, and it is as if the architect tells you, don't forget God. Although maybe he would deny if, confronted with such a maybe simplistic and sentimental, naive interpretation. As a young man, Jean Nouvel, freshly fallen from the examination which would have brought him into studying painting. Well, he failed as a future painter, but he didn't fail as an important, very important architect about time. And here is, I don't know why I show this. Do you know who this is? This is Frank Gehry. I don't know. Yeah, as a young man, coming from Canada, both lovers of art. The best engineer a few decades ago was someone who could create the most beautiful beam or structure. Today, it's to do a structure you cannot see or understand how it's done. It disappears and you can talk only about color, symbols, and light. It's an aesthetic of miracle. That's what Jean Nouvel said. We can debate what he said, but that's what he said. Another picture of him. He's quite capable of a theatrical persona. Now, L'Homme Revolte, a little bit mimicking, but again, theater seems to be part of architecture. Even Frank Lloyd Wright was a man of many hats. In fact, there is a book with this very title. The new police headquarters in Charleroi, Belgium, a building I contest as being good, because it's police headquarters do not need emphasis on the authority and power. I'm afraid of the police, and I would be doubly afraid if the headquarters of the police in my hometown or in the place I live in would look like this. This is really sadistic from Jean Nouvel. I mean, do we need this kind of, crashing tower for the headquarters of the police? What happened to him, to the sensitive man who likes architectural embroideries? I would be afraid to live in this town, in this city, really. And just because of this, that the police headquarters by Jean Nouvel looks like we see it here in this picture. It's terrible, absolutely terrible. He's supposed to be against authority, not to emphasize its power. No, I am sorry, Mr. Jean Nouvel. I pay homage to you now on your birthday, but I cannot accept this building. I can accept your shadow, yes, but I cannot accept this building. And this is in Paris, Fondation Cartier, a good building where you don't know very well if you're outside or inside. There are all kinds of reflections and transparencies. I hope I have more pictures with it. Fondation Cartier in Paris. Architecture is only a movie. Did he say so? Maybe I forgot since the time when I created this PowerPoint presentation. Maybe he did. But is it so? Maybe it is so. Maybe life itself is only a movie or a fantasy or a dream. And these are images from Fondation Cartier. And very masterly, he was able to create these ambiguities, these half transparencies, and you don't know very well if what you look at is there or is just a reflection. That he loves glass, we know. That he loves metal, we know. But he was able here with this building, which is an early building by him, to problematize again the relationship between the inside and the outside. Expo 02, Switzerland. Again, this is Jean Nouvel, and I like this Jean Nouvel. You know, is this some kind of a rusted domus eterna, this rusted cube on the water. Is a reminder now of the exit of life. How else to put it? In a way, it would be very inviting to interpret it comparatively with the Teatro del Mundo of Aldo Rossi. That one is suave. This was not suave. This is a heavy cube, sitting on water, and you could imagine at any time going under. It is in this work where I would say that the balance between innocence and cynicism is towards more cynicism. Maybe the word cynicism is not the best, the best word. I don't know very well how to describe. But it is a blunt assessment. I don't think in this work he has illusions about the end of life. That's what I'm trying to say, I guess. Onyx, Saint-Herblain in France. Another theater, I imagine. Yes, another box, a black box. Theater. Now, Torre Akbar in Barcelona, I mentioned it earlier, in that tower, by the way of that tower in Cyprus. No, sorry, it's not this work. It's another work, also in Barcelona. This one reminds one of the tower in that poor town in Belgium with the police headquarters. At least here he tried to diffuse a little bit the skin of the building through chromatic interventions that bring some sensitivity to the surface of the building. Otherwise, the building is as phallic as you can get. But here, the skin is a different sensitivity. It's, I would say it's the feminine principle which tries to come back and fight back the excessively assertive geometry of the tower. So I would associate this treatment of the facade with what Boileau called l'esprit de finesse. While the tower in its crystallization is an excessive representation of masculinity, of l'esprit de géométrie, as Boileau would say. Fortunately at night, but still, anyway. Another skyscraper. This one I like very much, but it was not built. But shows again Jean Nouvel how eager he is to continuously reinvent himself. And some of his best works were not built. I've heard him in a conference at Columbia University in New York many years ago saying that he probably lost more competitions than any other architect in history. I don't know. There are other architects who lost many competitions, but it's true that some of his best works were not built, like this tower. La Marseillaise, and you can see I played with the colors of the French flag too. The French architect Jean Nouvel has completed an office skyscraper in Marseille with a concrete facade painted in 27 shades of red, white, and blue in celebration of the port city's landscape. Here it is. Again, let's not forget, he wanted to become a painter. He became an architect, but he never forgot that once he wanted to be a painter. So he brings painting into the architecture. While the blue is meant to represent the city sky, the red is intended to mimic the hue of city's rooftops, and the white is supposed to reference the color of the rock on massive de Calanque, a stretch of rock coastline that runs from Marseille towards the town of Cassis. Well, come on, it's the French flag. Towers all over the world look too alike. They often appear interchangeable. They could exist anywhere, explained Nouvel. They rarely describe the city. They are tall but anonymous. My tower is singular. Its ambition is to belong clearly to the dense Mediterranean sea air. Problemul Park, Barcelona. So to build a park in Barcelona where Antoni Gaudí did so brilliantly is not an easy task. Let's see what he did. A different park than the Güell Park. We see here the erosions, the aesthetical erosions that show that he's aware of the ultimate destiny of everything on this earth. It's almost postmodern somehow, this gate. Well, it's still a work in progress. Vegetation still has to grow. He only made the initial steps, so to speak. Barcelona, a park by Jean Nouvel. Some tall trees are needed here, but maybe one day they will they will be here. And here he is maybe with the mayor of Barcelona, I don't know. Anyway. Now, the Fira Hotel in Barcelona, which I made reference to, is because here he insinuates nature through these unusual windows. This is a window in a hotel room in the Fira Hotel. Any student, at least in the School of Architecture here, who would have done something like this would have failed for sure the project. But Jean Nouvel built it, the Pritzker Prize winner. He built it. So he created an ornamentation, a field of ornaments through these exotic windows. And inside, yes, nature seems to want to devour from the inside the whole building. Now, the Guthrie Theater in Minneapolis, US, and this is the theater where Liviu Ciulei, and it is his centennial this year, a great theater and film director, Liviu Ciulei. He was the director of this theater for a number of years in Minneapolis, Minnesota, the Guthrie Theater, and the building in its new in its new appearance is belongs to Jean Nouvel. He did this work, Jean Nouvel. It's a machinery. It's a theater machinery. It's not a machine for living, but it's a machine for playing theater, for playing plays. And here we see Chekhov, the great Russian theaterman, and I don't recognize the other two. Anyway. This is Bernard Shaw on the left. It's intriguing, this passage to a long exterior corridor that is in cantilevered, and you'll understand why he built it. It was, as I said, he is a contextualist, and he is in this respect as well in this building. So you see this assertive horizontal piece of architecture that seems to want to escape its point of origin. And the reason he built it is in order to contemplate the frontier between the two states in the United States. I hope I have an image with this. But it's also about the expansionist imagination that the theater is supposed to externalize through the plays that are performed within the theater. So a theater is supposed to be provocative and to incite people, entice them to change themselves, to transform them. So maybe this architectonic entity could suggest something like this: transformation, metamorphosis, change, even dramatic if necessary. And yes, that's what you see from the end of this cantilevered part. You see the other side across the river. My knowledge of geometry is not great, so I don't know what state is beyond the river, but here is Minnesota. And you see someone who went all the way, unafraid that she might fall because of the audacious cantilevered part of the building. National Museum of Qatar in Doha, famous building by now, extravagant as it is. Here it is. Not too many architects would build something like this, but he did. And he inspired himself from this. Unfortunately, I was hoping to have an explanation of this. This is some kind of a, I don't know, could I describe it as a plant? It exists there, but not only there in Qatar. So inspired by it, he created this building. A contextualist architect that he is, in a subtle and sometimes rebellious way. Starting from this, he created this. You know, the National Museum of Qatar obviously is very different from most, if not all, other museums. And there are plenty of eccentric museums, but this is one of the most, if not the most. The only problem, from my point of view, is that again, he uses the circle without hesitation. And yes, here you don't perceive the roundness of the circle, but we are going to see during construction. And I think that is problematic. But otherwise, it's a challenging building, an interesting building that discreetly refers to that half plant, half mineral that exists in this area, but not only in this area, from what I understood. Here is an image of the construction site. And although he tried to fragment the the circle as he does because of these triangular elements that cover it, in my opinion, the roundness of the circles is too deterministic and too obvious. But this is my opinion. Maybe someone is less inclined to see this in rather negative terms. It reminds me a little also of that dome, cupola of the Abu Dhabi Louvre. And it could have been a little bit more, it could have allowed for a little bit more freedom. The circle is too defined, too willful, I think. But inside, anyway, it's a museum. It's an extravagant museum in a country with plenty of money. This is how it looks like from the air. And this is how it looks like at I imagine, the ground floor. These scattered, these shards of buildings, in my opinion, are a little bit threatening in a way. We can interpret them as representing the shards of culture. And then as the museum ascends, there is a sense of aleatory, of disorder. But because of the circle, perhaps he wanted to suggest crystallizations in which the will of the human being is still capable of showing itself, asserting itself. But at the lower level, this is what we see. The circle is almost absent. And there are just shards of fragments of buildings. Qatar, Doha. Sorry about this. These drawings are too pale for my taste, but that's how I found them. Maybe on Arch Daily. They always end their presentations with many drawings, all drawn a little bit too timidly for my taste. I don't know who made the drawings. And this is the building. And this is the source of the building. And this is the Pritzker Prize winner, Jean Nouvel. Let's wish him happy birthday today when he is 78 years old. Thank you for being here.